Greetings to this episode of the Nonprofit Exchange. It's Hugh and Russell, and we're joined by our colleague in Denver, Flo Lattery, who's got great experience in a number of areas, and I'm surprised by her experience every day. But today, we're going to talk about some programs that are just getting launched. I don't know when you're listening to this, but you can find them at centervisionleadership.org. generically, and we'll post some links in the copy once we get some clarity. They're just so new right now. The ink is still wet. So, Russell, you're on this podcast as a regular co-host. I'm not sure people know a whole lot about you and your background. So tell us a little bit about you here and your background and what led you to this area of expertise that you're going to share with us today.
Well, thanks, Hugh. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. We're back at it here for 2018. My background, well, my employment career in earnest, the biggest part of it started with market research services in 1980. I started working there, doing interviews and participating in focus groups and that type of thing before I joined the U.S. Air Force, where I served for 11 years. After my Air Force career, I sold advertising for television commercial spots. I did a stint with some print advertising. After college, I was economic and community development director for the Aroostook Band of Micmacs, a federally recognized Indian tribe. Spent a year at Child Development Services in northern Maine as the business director for the Aroostook County site. And from there, I proceeded to Denver, Colorado, where I spent 5 years as an auditor in the Small Business Self-Employed Division of the IRS. So that's kind of the journey in a nutshell. And from there, after some health problems that I recovered from nicely, I decided that beating people up for money was no fun, and looked at real estate and a few other things that really didn't excite me. So I went back to what brought passion to me, and that was actually going out and helping people. And I got a chance to do that with the Aroostook Band of Micmacs and Child Development Services in operation, in nonprofit type operations. And so that was an interesting education on the ground. If I had known what I didn't know when I started in, I might have ran for the exit screaming, but I did not. I just had to roll up my sleeves and try, and I did a lot of things by trial and error. And today I like to try to help organizations that are helping people avoid some of those pitfalls that I fell into so that they can go out and make a difference without feeling like they're under the gun all the time.
Sweet. So give us a little, you got two programs that we're going to talk about today. What are the names of them? Why did you create them? And what's the benefit of people looking at these programs?
Well, the first program I created was 4 Steps to Building a High-Performance Nonprofit. Because what I found out in people that I worked with some agencies that didn't have any support. And I worked in organizations, the organizations I named before, and we didn't have a systematic process for going out and getting the people that we needed or connecting with people or to come up with sustainable funding. We didn't have any systems for any of that. And so as a result of that, we were working in emergency mode where chaos was the order of the day. And we got a lot of things done, but it could have been a lot easier if we'd had the right systems and stepped back and got clear on what it is that we were about from the get-go and have a systematic plan to reach out to people who would be most likely to support what we're doing. So that's the first course. Our newest course, which will be ready within 2 weeks, is Building Successful Fundraising Plans. And this addresses what's popularly known as the elephant in the room, it addresses money. And so how do we go about getting money? There are a lot of revenue streams in there. And this course is designed to show nonprofit leaders what all of their options are and how they can go about doing this in a systematic manner that will actually serve them so that they can create a sustainable plan and not raise money in emergency mode.
Not in emergency mode. So with your work inside of a charity, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're addressing with these two programs?
Well, one of the things that's really critical is to have a team of people out there doing the work so that everything's not left in the lap of one person. So fundraising is something that has to become part of the culture where you're doing it across the board. And everybody needs the tools to talk about your organization in a way that engages people. So you need to be able to go out and find the people who will support you. You need to be doing things that are really centered on what you're good at. A lot of people waste time trying to fix weaknesses and invest a lot more time trying to fill gaps, trying to deal with weaknesses rather than working to their strengths. And one area that I saw that was really problematic was getting people to collaborate with other agencies. You can even have that problem within your own organization if it's big enough, getting people on the same page to collaborate. So it's working to your strengths and finding out what you don't have, and maybe looking at some alternative ways to go out and get them. You know, some organizations rely on grant funding exclusively or one other source of funding, and they've got most of their eggs in one basket and they don't have enough different streams of revenue to take care of the tough periods. And some sources of funding are better than others depending on your situation. So that's something we look at. What type of funding is right for you? What are some of the things that are out there? What's good about them? What's bad about them? Everything has advantages and disadvantages. So you have to really take a long look, and it's important to have all of those tools out there. That's why I created the Building Successful Fundraising Plans course, because it's a very broad field and there are a lot of options out there. But understanding what's going to work for you, what some of the advantages are, is really helpful. And to get those building blocks to actually put a plan together. And that's what that course is designed to do. You won't necessarily be an expert, but you'll definitely understand how to identify what it is that you're doing, who you serve, what you're best at, who are people that are going to be most likely to support you, how to reach them, and how to go about getting some of those resources.
I just had, did you just stop talking?
Well, I had to come up for air. So, but like the fundraising course, there's and this is the new one. This is something that's difficult for people. The 4 steps to building a high-performance nonprofit I put together because there are a lot of people that may not necessarily be in alignment and be clear on their goals, and they're out there doing a lot of different things when they haven't defined what it is that they're really all about. And so you have to get clear on what's most important to you so that you're working from those strengths and you get all of the resources you need, and create systems within the organization that will support your work going forward. And those 4 steps are really, in the 4 steps to building a high-performance nonprofit, you start by building a solid foundation. And that's getting clear on your DNA. Why should you support us? Who are we? And you want to get that as succinct and clear as you can. And then who are the people that will serve with you? So you build your leadership team, you decide what your core values are, Once you get people on the same page with that, the second step is to create effective action plans. So you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So we look at all of the things you want to do, and most organizations are set up with the idea of creating massive impact. And to do that, you have to sort of reverse engineer everything. So in the module on building effective action plans, we look at ways to do that, break things down into manageable chunks, and look at what's most important first, and then build a step-by-step plan to actually accomplish that, and to break things down in a way that you're able to look at what is it that I need to do from day to day. And the third module is to stay on track. So you have to measure everything you do, both as an organization and with your programs that you put out there. So staying on track talks about evaluation of your programs, how to design programs to make sure you're getting measurable results, and to look at how to measure whether your organization is effective in its primary areas. So that's what staying on track is about. And then the fourth module, communicating the value that you bring, is how to talk to your various audiences, where you do an analysis on the people that get your services, on donors. You look at potential funding sources and break down what it is that's important to them so that you can talk to them in language that is relevant to them, because it's about these people we're serving, not about us. And so the language we use has to resonate with them, and communicating value. And I don't hear a conversation about value when you talk with nonprofits. They talk about impact, but what it is value. People are looking for value. You know, where are people that you serve starting? Where are you going to bring them to, and how important is that? So everybody's got a different view of what the value you bring is, but you have it. And that's why we spend a lot of time on the front end looking at who you are and getting that DNA down so that you can communicate that effectively. And that's what that fourth module is about. And it's, of course, you could really do it as you're getting ready to start an organization. I think it's easier to start with the right building blocks, but if you're an established organization and you're having some difficulty, it's still useful to go through all of these processes in that 4 Steps to Building a High-Performance Nonprofit course to help right the ship, as it were. Or maybe you've lost sight of some things, suffered from a little bit of mission creep because you looked for some grant money or something that wasn't exactly in your wheelhouse, but hey, it sounds like good money, so let's go for it. So we don't want you to do that. You're less effective that way. So this is a course that can help people.
That's well, they both will. And you've given us a whole lot of data here. I wanted to unpack a few of them, but before I go there, Russell is one of the certified, what we call Wayfinders with CenterVision Leadership Foundation. Why don't you explain a little bit about what the difference in a consultant and a Wayfinder is, Russ?
Well, a Wayfinder is somebody that actually doesn't come in with the answers for you, because there are so many organizations. Everybody is unique, and that's why you need to spend time really figuring out what your DNA is, because everybody's different. You've got different personalities. You've got different ways of approaching people. You know, Wayfinders are people that walk in and ask all the right questions. It's asking the right questions that's important, not coming in saying, we've got a prescription for you, because you've got unique talents, unique resources, and unique genius. So it's important to build from your strengths and work in a way that resonates with you. And that's what Wayfinders do.
I really resonate, and this is part of what we teach together, resonate on this. Let's not spend time on all those piddling skills we have that will never be, on a scale of 1 to 10, they'll never be a 10. Mm-hmm. So why not spend time on 6, 7, and 8, getting them to a 10 or 9, and then delegate things that are 5 below to somebody that's already got a high comp in that skill set. So I think we spend a lot of time majoring in minor things, as the old saying goes, in any kind of leadership. So as we stay focused, stay on track, what do you see are some of the challenges that people have in staying on track? I think you're exactly right. The DNA, the grounding, who are we? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? What's the impact of our work? All of that foundational stuff is really critical. Otherwise, we're really not going to attract any funding. Just, we have a good cause, we know it, but we can't communicate it. So part of what I'm hearing is the exercise of going through and clarifying all of those elements then gives you a clear idea, but there's a scripting piece there. So how do people equip themselves with scripts about what's important? And then the other question I asked and didn't give you a chance to answer was, what are the biggest time that you want to get us off track? Focus, staying on track is one of the things that you help people do.
Well, it's part of the difficulty of staying on track is we don't always know what to measure. And that really starts with program design. When you actually create your programs, it's important to know what is it that you want to give people? Where do they start? Where do you want to take them to ultimately? And you may have to do that in stages, which means you have to do multiple programs. So that's a really important thing to look at. If you design these programs and you have your measures built in, then it'll work. But in order for your evaluation program to be effective, it has to be easy for the people who are working directly with your clients to keep the data that you need and to measure those results. If it's too difficult or too complicated, they're not going to use it. So this is important as far as looking at what people are doing. Now, for communicating that value, you have to be able to relate with your clients very closely and pull those stories out of them so that you can tell those stories to people who are supporting you. As storytelling is really important for nonprofits.
So let's deal with that scripting piece that you're talking about now. A lot of people have a lot of good ideas, and they're not able to put them into an articulate script that's not too long. And it's like they want to tell everybody everything about they ever thought they would be doing. And it really has a negative impact on the person they're talking to as far as buying interest and making a commitment for making a donation or any other kind of funding. So deal with how do you take all of this foundational discovery that we create, which sometimes can be more words than we want to use in making a presentation. So how do we, and you're a gifted writer, I know, I've seen lots of your really good stuff. So how do you transition, or how do you help people transition from all of the content ideas into what's the appropriate script for the appropriate audience?
Well, it's really breaking that language down. We really have to get to a core message, which is, okay, why would you support us? Or why should I give you money? And it's boiling it down, because there's a lot of things that people do. But we have to boil it down to those basic things because it resonates with people everywhere. And if you can do that in a sentence, that's the key. And so that's why throughout the 4 steps, there's a lot of reflective exercises in there, a lot of discussion that you'll have with your team, because you're going to have to boil it down to the most critical thing. And there are a lot of things in there that you are. But once you got that DNA statement, then it spills over into everything you do. It's a very smooth transition from why should we support you to why should I make a donation to why should I fund your grant. That transition gets to be smooth. Why would I come to your event? When your DNA is boiled into that, it becomes clear so that you can translate that for every different audience that you have. Why would we use your programs? What's different about your nonprofit versus this other one? And the idea is to look for where, through this process, you're working in an area, but maybe there's some gaps in the services that are available. And this is where you want to try to move and operate. It's no different than in the business per se, because if you've got a lot of nonprofits working in the same area and duplicating the same services, and people are not coming to a place where you want to get them, the question is what's missing. And so in the piece where we look at analyzing who these customers are, we do that with the people who are getting your services. You're going to have to talk to a lot of these folks to find out, okay, where are you going? Who are you working with? What's working for you? What's not working for you? And you're filling a gap. You might be solving the same problem, whether that's hunger or housing, but there are a lot of other people doing it. So in order to track support, you want to find a unique angle on that you can fill with what you got in-house or to collaborate with people to solve. So it's a process, definitely a process.
Well, and you've spoken, you alluded to it today, but you've spoken before about finding out what others are interested in. If you want to recruit board members, what are they interested in? So it would be the same for donors, right? What are they interested in? How do you have that dialogue?
Well, we keep that dialogue going between people who are in the organization. That's a dialogue that's ongoing with everybody internally. And we go out and we talk to people that we're going to serve, but we also look at who these prospective donors are going to be, or get a sense of who's in the community that we're serving. So in this process, we analyze customers from every angle. They may be grant writers, they may be individual donors, they may be people who are using their services. We do an analysis on people who may be coming as volunteers. What are we looking for in a servant leader or a volunteer? What are we looking for in prospective board members? And what is it that they want out of this process? Why are they supporting your organization? And it's important to know why these different multitudes of people are using and supporting your agency so that you can communicate that to others that might be interested. And they become sort of your champions. You get testimonials for everything you do. So it's a constant process of connecting, communicating, and staying in touch and talking to people in language that matters to them. Your donors are going to have different motivations than the people that get your services.
That would require building relationships, having a conversation, and learning about them, which sometimes people say they don't have time for.
Well, you got to make time to build those relationships. I mean, people are finding out no matter what sort of industry you're in, whether that's for-profit or nonprofit, that it's all about the relationships you have.
So I bet Flo's been listening actively to what you're saying. Flo, what kind of questions do you have? Give him a hard question. Let's stump. Listen to giving out the hard questions. Let's give him some.
Well, I'm thinking in terms of, you have those people who are just starting their nonprofits. You have those who have been established. And what are you seeing in the struggles and the difficulties between those two groups? Are they common issues? Are there common approaches to solving those problems? Do you take different approaches? Taken by the hand, how do you approach those two groups?
Well, some of the common issues are leader over functioning. You have a handful of leaders who have started off, maybe the founders themselves that have started out, and the organization is built on their DNA. And they may be really phenomenal and able to do a lot of things, but they can't step away. They can't take a vacation. They run the organization with an iron hand. And as a result, people don't stay. So that's a situation that's pretty common, is to have a few people that can do a few things, and they're trying to do everything. They're burning out and not really taking the time to recruit the right volunteers, the right board members. That's something that happens with both organizations. And if you start off on the wrong foot, and there are people that want to support you, but do they bring the skills, the knowledge, the connections, and the other things that you need to grow to the table? And if not, or what is it that they want out of it? You know, a lot of times people aren't clear on what they want out of the experience. So those are pretty common problems, and money's always an issue. With the established organizations, they typically will hit a place where they plateaued. They don't seem to be growing. They don't seem to be attracting new support. And the biggest thing is donor retention. They get people, but they're not keeping the ones that they get.
So for those owners that are the ones you just described, that, you know, they are the head cook and bottle washer. They think they have to run everything and do everything themselves. They really haven't taken the time to build an organization. And sometimes I think it's just that the intention is there, they just never got around to doing it. Okay, they're in the, you know, the hamster wheel. They're doing what they're doing over and over and over again, and they haven't taken the pause to say, well, how do I get the help I need? How do I get the structure I need? How do you change that mindset?
Well, it takes a lot of effort, especially if you get somebody that's really been effective, been a power driver, been great at making some connections, but it's just done everything herself or himself. It's really, that's kind of what the book, The Founder's Dilemma, talks about. They get a hold of it. This is my baby. I want this done. Maybe I need some help, but who can I trust? And well, you know, it would be quicker for me to just do this myself than to show somebody how to do it, or to bring somebody in. Or a lot of times it's an issue of saving money, saving time, which over the long haul, after a while, leads to that burnout. And you just can't do everything. And when everything looks like an opportunity, there are people that are serial entrepreneurs, they just go out and grab it. And yes, it might be something that fits, but you really got to have an idea of what your big picture looks like and decide what needs to be done first. And if you do too many things at once, if you don't have that infrastructure, you're bound to crash. You've got to take that step back and do the most important things first. Once you get a system built for how you put these things in the can, it just becomes like clockwork when you got the right people. And then you can draw that support and expand. And growth is a problem for a lot of organizations, you know. You got to have those right people and put people in places so that you, as an executive director and a CEO, are doing only the things that nobody else can do, and you're handing everything else off to your team.
Thank you.
Well, that's a good piece of wisdom. And you know, Russ, you and I both seen executives doing way too much. And they're trying to do it all, and they're robbing team members of an opportunity to do some meaningful work. And they're thinking they're being helpful, but they're really not. And they're getting burned out. The team's getting frustrated, and it's, you know, it's a downward spiral. You talked about other streams of revenue earlier. The saying is, if you have one stream of revenue, you will have 100% chance of going broke. So speak about diversifying those income streams.
Well, there are a lot of different types of revenue out there that people may or may not have thought about, and you can over rely on one specific stream to your detriment. Now, you don't necessarily have to have 12 or 14. The idea is to have a number of streams, and you can come to a place where you've got so many different streams that you're not handling any of them effectively. But it's really looking at the industry that you're in and what opportunities you have to bring value. Because some nonprofits, by their nature, by their structure, or the business they're in, may be able to generate what's called mission-based income from it, which is where you're charging fees and services for the services or programs that you're running. But you can do that as part of your mission. There are nonprofits that have businesses that are completely unrelated to the mission. And the advantage to that is that you can focus on profits more so than mission. So that's a different revenue stream. A lot of companies or nonprofits rely on grant funding. Grants come from a number of places. Government agencies, they come from different foundations. And we've got a sort of a detailed chart that comes in the course. It talks about some of the advantages and disadvantages of different funding sources and revenue streams. A lot of times your biggest stream of funds is going to come through donations from individuals. And those come in a lot of different flavors, both short and long term. And the key advantage to having individuals donate is your largest source of giving. It's an ongoing source that you can build on. Volunteers are also a good source of money. Developing these relationships can be costly, and you may need to have a lot of small donors, so it takes time to build up. If you don't have a broad-based direct service appeal, it could be hard to build. It's tricky if you're not experienced at doing it, and you'll need significant assistance from your board of directors and supporters. So those are some of the pros and cons, but you got to build those relationships. And it starts by turning small donors into big donors. And so we cover corporations, churches, community foundations of different sizes in the course. But those are just some of the things that we talk about as far as different sources of revenue. And we've got some information in there on where to look and do some of that research, and how to measure how effective you are at keeping donors.
Keeping donors. Heard of that before. Yeah, people get complacent and donors lose interest because we're not continuing with that relationship that we started out with. Are there other reasons that donors go off the map or charities get complacent?
Well, sometimes people, they support more than one cause, and they just, if you don't hold their interests or cultivate things and talk about things that they're interested in, they won't stay with you. So it's educating them and recognizing them. Every time you reach out to them, you shouldn't necessarily be asking them for money. You should spend a lot of time thanking them and showing them how their money is creating the impact that they signed on with you for. And look at growing the donors to get them to come back. That's why it's important to stay in touch with them, is to keep them coming back and to actually ask them to do more to support you. And donors are a good source of volunteers or servant leaders, and servant leaders are a good source of donations. If they'll roll up their sleeves and invest their time with you, they probably will write you a check as well. Wow. In what you're doing.
Whoa. That's right. So, Flo, you're formulating another question, I can tell.
Well, what are some of the aspects of motivating your donors and contributors? How do you keep them motivated?
Well, it's that staying in touch and finding different ways to thank them. So you feature these folks in your programs, you feature them in your events, you talk to others about how their work is supporting the organization so that they know that they're appreciated. It's important to do donor appreciation events where you're not asking for money, but you're just recognizing some of your donors and making a big deal about how their contributions are contributing to their work. So it's always staying in touch. Part of staying on track, the module we talked about in there, is finding ways to measure what you're doing. And that involves constant conversation. Maybe surveys, contests, find different reasons to reach out and ask them what it is that they think about what you're doing, what you can do better, what they'd like to see more of, because they're passionate about your cause. So why not actually leverage this brain power from people that support you, whether they're your clients or your donors? You know, they're all willing to share their opinions if you reach out and ask.
Organizations usually, we just went through year end, and there's always a big push at year end to donate and get, matching or tax deductibility. Are there going to be impacts? Do you know at this point if there's going to be negative impacts to contributors and donors based on the new tax bill?
Well, I'm not very familiar with that, and I've started looking at that. And it definitely favors the higher income givers. And so I think we could see a little bit of a downturn because after this year, donors who don't itemize will not be able to take those deductions.
Right.
So I don't know how many people that's going to impact, but it's possible that will impact the amount that comes in.
And so how do organizations compensate for that?
Well, it's really important to communicate that value that you're bringing and stay connected to those audiences, because that's going to be the power of the relationships that you have that's going to determine whether people continue to support and to support at the same levels. Other things like the estate tax can have an impact because that's huge. That's just about double what's exempt now. Estates of up to 11 million for single and 22 million for couples. You don't see any tax until you exceed those levels. So that's a lot of people set up the plan giving and bequests on the basis of avoiding some of those taxes. So I don't know how that's going to impact the higher income folks as what they donate.
It'll be interesting to see how that all fleshes out.
Yeah. There's been a lot of needed changes in the tax law. I'm not sure that one's over well, is it?
We just have to sort of wait and see. It doesn't look like it's going to have a very good impact just on the surface, but a lot will depend on whether donor advised services can continue to garner the type of support they have, donor advised funds, that is. If they can continue to garner the support they've been getting and just keeping people engaged in solving all of these problems. Government funding's being pulled away from that. So the private sector and the government are not really structured to handle the type of problems that we've got going in our society. So nonprofits and social enterprises are sort of that third sector and that fourth sector that are getting out there and trying to leverage impact-based investments to try to solve these problems.
So as we are doing the wrap here, Russ, let's go back and programs and just give a name them just as a reminder here.
Well, yeah, 4 steps. The introduction to fundraising course looks at why you should have one. And so some of the things that you'll get out of that course will be an understanding of how to apply the ingredients that you need to create a comprehensive fundraising plan. You'll gain clarity on who you serve. You'll gain focus on the most important activities you engage in and the results you want to get. You'll have a complete and thorough inventory of the resources that you currently have on hand and understanding what you need next. You'll get a solid foundation for calculating the costs you need to fulfill your mission, and that includes analyzing where your revenues are currently coming from. You'll get tools for gathering information and understanding things outside of your organization that can impact the way that you operate. So, and then you have a list of resources that will help you gather some of the most important information that you need. And so we created a Facebook group, the Fundraising Success for Social Profits, and that'll be a private Facebook group that's included with the course for dialogue, live Q&As, and a place to connect with other nonprofit leaders in the community where we can answer questions that are more detailed. And as we go along, we'll just continue to answer those questions and make sure that you get what you need here in the Cinevision community to continue to stay on top of fundraising as a plan to build a great plan. And we'll be talking about different resources on that page, doing Facebook Live. We'll talk about other resources. There'll be updates on the impact of the income tax and other things. So we'll be making sure that you get all of this information. This is a high value package that will help you put together a fundraising plan and give you a look at the landscape. And as for the 4 steps to building a high performance nonprofit, you'll get that clarity that you need, but you'll be able to build solid action plans and put your work together in a way that's manageable, it's not overwhelming. You'll do a good customer analysis to understand what really drives the audiences that you're reaching out to. You'll have a good way to analyze that so that you can focus on them. And you'll understand your strengths, and you'll actually build a shopping list by the time you're done with that to get people that are aligned with you so that you can go reach out to people to collaborate with. So that's really very important too, to do the things that other people are not doing out there so that you stand out and you're not doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, but you're bringing unique value to the table in your own way that's aligned with who you are.
Russell, you bring a lot of value to leaders in many worlds, especially nonprofit world. Thank you for sharing about these. You've put a lot of research and a lot of effort in creating these programs, I know, and we will have this transcribed. If you're listening to it on the video, you can go to the Nonprofit Exchange on iTunes or Stitcher and get the podcast. You can go to centervisionleadership.org /podcasts, and you can find them there, or you can go to the nonprofitexchange.org, and it'll take you to the page where there's a replay of this video and links where you can sign up for the podcast. The transcript will be in the podcast, so you have to subscribe to the podcast to be able to get the transcripts. We'll put some of the links on the nonprofitexchange.org page, however. So, Russell, thank you for spending this time with such wonderful, intense, useful content.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to 2018 because we'll be here every week. And I'm very excited about actually ramping up some of our discussion boards on the Cinevision site as we look at covering other areas of nonprofit operations, so that we've got stuff that people are looking for week in and week out. I would encourage anybody that's watching this broadcast to send us a message or contact us by email. Let us know what things that you're very interested in and what you'd like to hear more about, because we're always putting quality products together. But we want to serve you in ways that you want to be served. And that's really what's most important out here, serving people the way that they want to be served, so that we can bring them the most valuable information to help them. You're out in the trenches and you're serving people in need and solving some big problems. So the climate has shifted a little bit from a tax perspective and from a government perspective. The government's just not going to do it. And as I said, private business isn't necessarily structured to tackle some of these social problems. So we're on the new frontier, Hugh. We've got all sorts of benefit corporations and socially responsible businesses. We've got impact investors who are not just looking for the bottom line dollar, but are looking to make a difference. So it's a changing landscape, and we want to be in the middle of that, help bring that to you so you can get out there and do what you do best.
Wise words indeed, Russell. Thank you for being on the hot seat today. And Flo, thanks for hanging out with us.
Absolutely. You're welcome.